what we get to talk about. What we get to talk about today. I'm excited to be here as we talk about advocacy and research, these practical pathways for researchers and clinicians. As was mentioned, my name is Dr. Dalen Moore, and I am a clinician in the Student Counseling Center at the University of Central Arkansas and an adjunct professor of graduate counseling at John Brown University. And I want to introduce my co-hosts and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catalina Kraft. I'm a pre-licensed counselor in the state of Virginia. I'm also a second-year doctoral student, soon-to-be third-year doctoral student at Old Dominion University.
Yeah, and we are members of the Counselors for Social Justice, the research committee. And today we'll be facilitating the conversation with Dr. Wilkinson and Dr. Brizola to discuss advocacy and research, practical pathways for clinicians and researchers. If you are new to this space and the Counselors for Social Justice, Counselors for Social Justice, or CSJ, is a division of the American Counseling Association that promotes social justice and counseling through advocacy, education, and community engagement. Our mission is to empower counselors to take action against systemic oppression, inequity, and injustice in all forms, ensuring that counseling remains an inclusive and transformative practice for individuals and communities. And through professional development, research, and policy advocacy, CSJ continues to take charge of integrating social justice principles into counseling practices. And before we get going, I want to kind of make note of who is in the room. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the leadership behind this important work, particularly in the research committee, to Dr. Ferguson, and who's our president-elect in CSJ, and to Dr. Pamfield, both of whom serve as co-chairs of the research team. I know Dr. Pamfield, I'm looking around for Dr. Ferguson, but we appreciate their leadership and their support in this process and guidance through this webinar series. We are fortunate to have other folks of our research committee here on board with Catalina and I today. I think I see Olivia and a couple others in the room, and some that will be joining us in a little while. And we love this group of scholars and practitioners who've contributed their time and insight to help center the voice of BIPOC communities and other historically underrepresented populations in our research efforts. And we are definitely grateful for the work that we do. So as we transition into the webinar, I want to kind of offer a few housekeeping things to keep us mindful of our time together in this shared space. This webinar is being recorded. So if you would, please mute yourself to ensure a clear recording for those who are not in attendance. And as was stated earlier, your video can be on or off during the webinar, whichever you prefer. Questions are welcome throughout our time together throughout this event, so please place them in the chat. And the moderator will gather questions and ask them during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. And so we will have about 10 minutes. We're going to try to allot for question and answer at the end of our time together today. One CEU will be provided for your attendance, so please stay for the full presentation and complete the post-event survey to receive credit. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host to get us started.
Yes. Thank you, Dylan, for that introduction. Oh, Dr. Wilkinson, I'm sorry, your picture for some reason is not loading. Well,
quite all right. I'm right here. So
yes. Well, thank you everyone for coming to our event. We're really thrilled that you're all here today. I'm going to be introducing our panelists today. It's an honor to be able to introduce them. So as you briefly saw on camera, and then as you can see in the photo as well, we have Dr. Wilkinson and Dr. Brizola. Dr. Brett Wilkinson is an associate professor and director of counselor education at Purdue University, Fort Wayne. He's also editor-in-chief of the Journal of Humanistic Counseling, director of the PFW Institute for Counseling Research, and a licensed mental health counselor in a private practice in the state of Indiana. His research interests include therapeutic change mechanisms in the changes model, existential phenomenological practices, cognitive complexity development, and radical embodied cognition. Dr. Elizabeth Brizola is a researcher and clinician born and raised in Brazil, where she earned a PhD in psychology at the Pontifical Catholic University in Campinas, studied the lived experiences of mothers singing to their infants. She relocated to the US in 2018, where she continues to partner with researchers worldwide. She's passionate about understanding the emotional, motivational, and social experiences of people with diverse backgrounds and challenges, including Brazilian Black women, musicians who had to stop playing for physical reasons, Brazilian immigrants in the US, people with bipolar disorder, children who have been sexually abused, and caretakers to family members in hospice. To achieve this, she conducts person-centered phenomenological studies, exploring and disseminating the creative and effective power that empathic and genuine relationships have on us. So I just want to give a brief moment to say thank you for being with us here today. We really appreciate you taking your time to join us for this panel. So for the folks of you in the audience, the way that this is going to work is that Dalen and I do have some questions that we've prepared for Dr. Wilkinson and Dr. Brizola. So we're going to go ahead and get started on asking those questions. And like Dr. Dalen said, if you have your own Q&A questions, put those in the chat and we'll allot 10 minutes at the end to cover all of those. So jumping right in, as we get started, can each of you share what led you into the field of counseling and counseling research?
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you so much, Catalina, and all for this such warm welcome. And I must say, I love that music at the beginning. Thank you for bringing in that fun song. I guess it's pretty much natural how I bumped into the counseling research role. I'm where I came from, Brazil. I grew up in a ranch-like sort of place, and just with a lot of contact with nature and different people and situations and socioeconomic situations. And I guess I've always had a really curious mind for everything. Everything I saw and people I would come in contact with, I wanted to understand more. And as I grew up, I just naturally fell into counseling. And in Brazil, we don't have that as a profession. It's a psychologist, but it's very similar to what we have here, and in counselor education and the internships and all the. And once I started realizing that not only could I be a counselor, but I could look at counseling through the lens of understanding more deeply what's really going on, I just fell in love. And I need to say that Carl Rogers was one of those open doors for me. Once I started reading his works and how he, just how he saw the human being, how he yearned to just know really what's going on, and how to help people and help everyone. And there was space, respect and love I saw in it. And I said, oh, I like this, whatever it is, I want to follow this path. And that's kind of how it went. And I've been mostly with both feet in clinical work and research and kind of just moving along.
And I'll dovetail off of that because I think that the humanistic vein that most closely affiliated with, I think you spoke to the heart and care through Rogers, and a lot of my introduction to counseling was through an existential lens. And so my entry into it is like many others, where through my own life experiences, I often came into the role with people of being a form of support and listening. And my empathic attunement is a result of my mother's empathic attunement with myself. And I was able to lean into that and try to define myself and my journey through being able to make contact with people in a meaningful way. And that led me into interest in understanding through other things how minds work. And so it led me into the counseling realm. And then from research, it was a natural progression from there because my curiosity and interest in scholarship has led me down many different winding paths in model development and research to try to clarify and refine what are often, I think, complicated concepts and topics that we need to make more accessible in order to deepen our resonance in the therapeutic process. And so that's what I aspire to do. And I really am very fortunate to have an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both for sharing that introduction. I'm hearing a lot of like humanistic qualities, which I think is kind of leads us into our next question, because part of what gathered us here today was the Association of Humanistic Counseling's Publication Pathways. And so can you tell us a little bit more about what that initiative is and what led you to create it?
Absolutely. And so the development of the Publication Pathways Initiative came through conversations I had had with some members of leadership at the Association for Humanistic Counseling. And as the editor of the Journal of Humanistic Counseling, and having done relatively recently, completed a 15-year qualitative synthesis on the journal's work, having looked back in time, I saw that in the 90s, there were quite a bit of case studies that were submitted. And through those case studies submitted to the Journal of Humanistic Counseling, but then also looking over to JCD and others, that there was at one point a more clear practitioner voice influencing the journal and influencing thereby the thoughts of practitioners and academics in the field of counselor education. And I brought this observation to some of the leadership and at AHC, and there was agreement that we should build something. And so what is the Publication Pathways Initiative? It is a collaborative effort, ideally with practitioners in the field who have interesting case studies that they would like to bring into dialogue through the journal. And what we provide is, on our side, we have a dozen counselor educators who have experience in qualitative research and writing for publication. And we pair these counselor educators with practitioners in order to support them in the process. Now, this is not a mentorship effort. It requires both parties on the practitioner side who initiates the contact and says, I have this interesting case we would like to bring to bear. And I would like to be in dialogue with a seasoned researcher who can help me in the publication process. And then we would send out that information to our team, and the team reviews the possibility, and then someone may select and say, I would like to be in touch with this. So for example, Dr. Brizola would be one of our members of the actual team who would pair up with a practitioner. Now, so what is it? It is an opportunity for practitioners in the field to publish their experiences and ideas that are occurring in the room with clients. And it is a collaborative effort such that we can support those practitioners in the publication process. Why do we create it? We created it because the voice of practitioners matters, and it should matter to all of us in counselor education, because the heart of the profession is counseling itself and not just the education of counseling. And because of that, we need to provide opportunities and outlets and change the culture around publication, in my view, such that we don't isolate ourselves in the ivory tower of publication, where we are counselor educators talking only to counselor educators, but instead conducting consistent outreach to practitioners to let them know that their voices matter, that we want to hear from them, and that they can contribute to ongoing dialogues that inform the direction of our field.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that, Brett, because when you presented this to us, hey, I have this idea, I was like, whoa, yes, this is wonderful. Wow. And I think what mostly hit me was this facilitates, this is like a way, hey, pathway, open up, open doors for something that may seem like on the other side of the bridge, there's no way to get there. That might be cool. Hey, research, yeah, that seems real nice. But this was, hey, there's a sign, go this way, you can cross the bridge and you can meet someone there and build something. And that was, that was really, really impressed me. I think this is needed, right? To not look so hard, not look like impossible to get to.
That's right. Thank you for highlighting this, Dr. Brizola, because the big part here is to say there has been a culture created for a very long time. Like the practices we engage in counselor education and training, it sets the landscape for what is possible in the minds of people. And I think that there is a self-limiting belief among master's level practitioners and even PhD level practitioners in the field who go into practice rather than counselor education, that research journals are for academics only. And I think that that's a big problem. And so providing this opportunity, we're actually reaching out and saying, your voices matter. We want to be a part of bringing your experiences into this dialogue and making it, as you said, accessible.
Yeah. There is a way to do that.
Yeah, and y'all are doing it, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have y'all kind of come and share a little bit. Because even what's coming up for me, I know I have some students in a class I teach, master's level. When we talk about research, it can seem so abstract or not in connection to the practicum or internship experience. And so I'm curious for you all, when you think about the barriers maybe that practitioners face, could you speak a little bit more, maybe starting with you, Dr. Priscilla, a little bit more into the barriers? I'm thinking about the practitioner that's in an agency setting or that's seeing clients all day. What are some of the barriers that those practitioners face in the world of research, including but not limited to like trying to become a part of a pathway like this or trying to produce research? Can you share a little bit about some of those barriers and in ways that you think we can overcome some of that?
Yeah. So when I think of barriers, two things come to mind, I think. Exterior barriers, I'll call them something from the outside, and interior barriers that are part of me and my experience as a clinician, right? And I think both of those have a part in making it difficult to find that pathway or that bridge, right? And I guess I'm thinking of my friend Amanda. She's a counselor, LMFT supervisor, and I was talking to her just this past week, and well, I guess I'll tell a little story if you don't mind. One day I went to this webinar. I said, "Oh, this is a cool topic. I'm going to go, listen to what these people have to say." And Amanda was a speaker there, and she was talking about something that was real special to me, which was mothers who had just had babies and they were transitioning into motherhood, and she had groups as a clinician. She put together these groups, and this is a passion for me because I had studied mothers singing to their babies and how that interaction is important, what that experience is like. And so I know as soon as that webinar finished, I went on my computer. I said, I'm going to write her an email right now. So I wrote her and said, Amanda, this is just fabulous. This is wonderful. Wow. Can we have coffee? Can we talk? And we met and we aligned so much, and we said, let's do something together. Can we do something together? And she said, well, yeah, let's. But she had never done any research, and I had done research, and so this is something she said. Now, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to have this, but how do I go about it? I don't even know where to start. What do we do? So I think in that sense, just what we sat down and with my experience with research and her, clinical experience, we sat down and tackled those barriers. It is possible. So what do we do and how do we do it and what's important? So we've had several conversations. We recorded them and put put it on the paper, because that's one of the hardest parts. It's here. I have all this experience. I've been, in the clinical research, maybe years, maybe even decades, and I've built up all this knowledge, and what do I do with it? I want to share, but how? How do I go about that? And so we sat down, we talked. We helped each other out. It was a collaboration, and now we're putting it on paper. I think there's a sense of loneliness sometimes that I feel, that barrier inside of us. This is what I do, and each client is a client, and what does it have to do with others? Does it have anything to do with others?
I
Yeah,
agree.
that internal and external. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Wilkinson. I like kind of what y'all are saying with both of those barriers. It's internal, maybe some limiting barriers that I may have, but also external as well. So sorry to cut you off there, Dr. Wilkinson.
Oh,
What
no
would you
worries at
add?
all. Yeah, self-limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
right? Which is often and lack of reason or opportunity to develop certain skills in writing. A lot of people who feel they move through a master's program and feel really inspired to go into research will pursue a doctorate. And there are many practitioners in the field who haven't identified or don't identify as writers, don't identify as researchers, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a tremendous amount of experience to share. And so what are the barriers? I like this. It's internal. There are the self-limiting beliefs. There's the lack of skill development is something of a, and then also time pressures. I mean, people who are in private practice, very, very little time, very busy anyway. When am I going to have time to write something up? Questions about the relevance of their experience. And oftentimes, because so many journals are behind paywalls, we have these huge barriers to access. We're, slowly kind of moving to open access, but broadly speaking, limited access. They're outside of many of the conversations that are occurring within academia, and not quite sure how to position themselves relative to that. So feeling like an outsider, right? Feeling like on the outside looking in, limited time, all these things contribute to not feeling like they know how to go about it or what to do.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Not having.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Not having the time, sometimes not having the space. What is there even space for this? Is there that's how, when you told us about your idea, the Pathways Bread, I was just like, yes, a real space. There is space, because even if you have that courage to, okay, no, this is something important. I want to share this with other people. I have this, experience maybe with a certain population, or maybe in a way of working with people that's great. It's working, it's good. I want to share this, but then where, how, not only the how, but where, and is there any door, and where are those doors?
Yes. Where are the doors? There's become such a separation
Yeah.
between the practitioners in the field and and academia that I think we have a deep responsibility to figure out how to bridge that gap and create greater consolidation and communication and opportunities so that we're integrated. This balance, on balance, this break between counselor education and counseling practice, I think is deeply problematic. Kind of leads into our next question, I think.
Yes, yes, I agree. I think y'all really did a great job of identifying the barriers that are faced from practitioners in the field. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Dr. Wilkinson, with like that ivory tower. And so folks who like get their masters and then they go into the fields, like they might view research in the lens of like, that's an ivory tower that's out of my reach. And part of it, like y'all said, is like that internal element, but then there's like these external elements that are kind of reinforcing those internal elements. So it does, like you said, introduce introduce us to our next section in which, so via Counselors for Social Justice, including the research committee, we're really big on decolonizing and demystifying research, which kind of sounds like is the next steps after we've identified these barriers. So with those concepts in mind, how do you all in your research, decolonize and demystify the research process for practitioners as well as the clients that we serve?
Now, you want to go ahead, Brett?
Certainly. Sorry, I had a little internet lag there. I think this is an incredibly important question. I'm so grateful for CSJ bringing us on because what does it mean to decolonize and demystify the research process? If we look at decolonization just through a post-structuralist power-based lens, then we're saying that there are structures of power that are in place and that the structures of power are what I identified as a perceived separation and what can be perceived within certain groups as something that's elite and accessible or out of reach, something that is not a part of the normal process for a group of persons because it is held in esteem or held through some sort of monopoly in power by a majority group. And in this regard, I think that the research process, in some ways, it always has been. It's always been rooted in colonization. The research process has always been something that has been rooted in power structures, those who have knowledge and those who don't, those who have access to knowledge and those who don't, those who have access to the opportunities that are afforded through knowledge and those who don't. And so what does it mean for us to decolonize? It means to create accessibility. It means to advocate for voices in order to break down the power structures that separate us. It means acknowledging that there are separations of power through educational systems and levels of education that separate us. And when we say the ivory tower, there is a sort of echo chamber that can occur. And bringing research to the masses at one level means making things accessible through open access, which I'm a big advocate for, open access processes. Knowledge should be disseminated equitably to everybody. And then providing opportunities and outlets for, in this instance, practitioners in the field who feel disenfranchised and disconnected from conversation, bringing them into the fold. And the demystification process is central to that. Like if you're not within academe, you don't know the processes of academe. And by and large, master's level students in particular, but even those with PhDs can feel on the outside looking in and don't feel like it's their world, right? That that's a world for another group of people and that those people have PhDs by and large, and those people with PhDs are speaking amongst themselves. And so how do we decolonize research? We create access, we break down the barriers that separate us, and then we create new opportunities, which is what we're trying to do. Dr. Brazilla?
Yeah. Yeah, this speaks to me very personally, right? I mean, I guess it brings back memories from when I was studying in Brazil. I was born and raised there, and so that, you know, that was my culture. I would maybe, you know about other, you know, ways of doing things in the US, and but oh my word, when I started, you know, embarking into this research world, it's like, yes, this is so fun. And, you know, but what have people been writing about, you know? And in Brazil, all journals are open access. So this is what I was used to. So yeah, I wanted to see, well, what has been, you know, written about the psychology of this or the experience of that. And I would just go online and, you know, pull up the papers, and then pretty soon there would be these, like, this, only the abstract and nothing else. And but how do I get to that paper? But I want to know more. And I couldn't. I mean, and I'm thinking, wait, do journals actually close the doors for knowledge? And that seemed just so like, wait, no, please. Isn't science for everyone? Isn't, I mean, all of us live science because we're, you know, humans, and we're living, and we're constantly making decisions and based on, you know, ideas and experiences and reading information. I mean, how do you do it? How can science be closed? Yeah, and then was maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, I partnered. I met this wonderful woman, Debbie, in London, from London, on another webinar. And she was also interested in babies crying and infants crying a lot, and how our mothers dealing with that, and how music can really actually help with this soothing and just helping both mother and infant. And so, yeah, we also caught on a conversation and decided to, well, I had to, although I had a master's and a doctor in Brazil, when I moved here, I couldn't practice, right? Because there are A, B, C, D, E, F, G things that I have to have. And I had maybe, wait, is this that? Or is that this? Or, yeah, I had all those, but that's called something else and has a different name. And so there was, anyway, long story short, I just decided, well, I'm going to do another master's. So I went into this master's program here in Austin, and voila. And so we had this, one of the subjects was child development, and we had to write a paper at the end. And so, yeah, okay, so I'm going to write about infants and music and how that can help. And so I said, Debbie, I just wrote this paper, a small end of the course paper. I want to, partner with me, and we can, turn this into an article. And yeah, so I found a journal, and she said, yes, let's do it, but I want it open access because I want all the musicians or music therapists or mothers or anybody to have access, be able to click on it and it opens and you can actually read. And okay, so I went after that and did everything that needed to be done. And I went to the end and clicked all the boxes. Have you done this? Have you done that? And the very last box was a box for, have you, are you going to pay whatever it is to have
Publish.
your published open access? And no,
Pay to play.
there was no place in the website saying that there was a, and I said, oh no, my goodness. And so I said, Debbie, would you mind, let's publish in Brazil. I know a journal, and they do publish both English and Portuguese. And yep, that'll come out this year. And that's another thing, right? Portuguese and English. I mean, yeah, English, we need to write in English. So that, that's the science language. But also Portuguese, right? Because people in Brazil don't always have access to the language. So I think language could also be a huge, impediment for knowledge and for develop. Anyway, I might be getting off a little bit there.
I agree with you. There's so many layers to how access is and barriers to access, right?
Yeah.
And if we talk about demystifying, I'll bring in a story, right? My wife is a Gestalt practitioner in private practice, and she has a lot of experience, and she has done trainings internationally with some incredible groups of people and names, and yet when it came to, we had an opportunity more recently where I was working on a paper that was recently published in the Humanistic Psychologist, where I had developed a concept, and of course, she and I are always talking about how to, the practical implications, how this stuff actually works, right, in practice.
Right. Yeah.
And she and I sat down, and I said, I need your help in this process as an active practitioner. I have some clients, but I'm not in full-time practice, right? I can't as an educator. I don't have time. And she's in full-time practice. And so we sat down and we worked through this process and developed a transcript where she was in the counselor position, in the counselor position, and I was role-playing the client that she was using as a model, and so we could kind of recreate because it hadn't been recorded, and it became part of the publication. And so this question of like, well, how do we demystify? I think we need to understand that we can look at research through a research lens and a scholarship lens. I didn't ask her to engage with me in some sort of intensive quantitative or qualitative research process. I asked her to engage with me in scholarship. What we're asking people to do through case studies is engage in scholarship. Scholarship is a little bit different. It doesn't quite require the same level of research savvy. It is about translating practice into conceptual language. And so Publication Pathways is all about that. Publication Pathways is about case studies. We've provided, I created a pragmatic case study guide. It is on the AHC, Association for Humanistic Counseling website. It is a step-by-step guide that practitioners can use along with counselor educators to craft a case study that is pragmatically grounded. So there are lots of forms of case studies. I've done a presentation on Counseling Today around this, and a paper in Counseling Today, or an article that discusses the difference between pragmatic case studies and empirical case studies. We aren't asking people to engage in empirical work. We're asking them to reflect upon their process, identify aspects of a case that are particularly relevant, and if possible, to either bring transcribed material in or to work and to create, we consider a compiled quote unquote hypothetical transcription, but based upon real cases, right? And that is allowing people to say in the field, the work that I'm doing is compelling. The work that I'm doing should be accessed by master students who want to see what is actually being done in the field. I know as a counselor educator, and I know that for many of you as counselor educators, you've had students who want to see transcriptions. They want to see live examples. They want to see what counseling can look like. We don't have enough of that. We aren't providing enough examples. And when we don't provide exemplars, I think we're doing a tremendous disservice. And this means that we can move towards prioritizing the actual practices that are taking place in the field and showing counselors in training what it can look like to do the work. And that can be through all different theoretical perspectives with all different clients from all different backgrounds. And the more diversity we get, the more richness we get, the more we're going to provide a larger field of vision for what is possible. And I think that's exciting. I think that's fundamentally exciting. And if we can rally, then we can resuscitate the relationship we have with practitioners, draw them in and say, we're practitioners first, right? We're a practitioner first. If we're training master students, we are practitioners first. And that's what we're trying to identify. Demystification is about providing the outlets and the opportunities. It's drawing people into the fold. And when you get into the cycle and you start creating case studies through Publication Pathways or through any other journal, it doesn't have to be humanistic, it can be for any journal, then you're providing examples. And then those master students know that is possible. And then they go into the field knowing that they could do that someday. We don't have that right now. They don't know that they have an outlet. Until we create that path, we have to change the culture that way, the culture of counselor education. And that's what Publication Pathways is trying to do to demystify the process, is create a new generation of practitioners, counselors in training who know that they can have a voice when they get out into the field and maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, come back and say, now I'm ready to show off my chops and be proud of that.
Yeah, that's so good. And I get so excited listening to you all share about this because when Catalina and I were talking about this is really, Catalina was pushing us as we were kind of thinking about bringing this to light, this webinar. Based on what y'all have said, it is a lot of that disconnect between the practice of counseling or the practitioners in the counseling field and the clients we serve, and sometimes the research that we are supposed to be rooted in. And there can sometimes be that disconnect. And I liked what you all said, naming the reality that research has inherently been a colonized thing. And particularly, I love like the open access you're talking about, Dr. Priscilla, that you're used to, and then come into the US and saying, well, why are we keeping knowledge away from folks? Why do you have to pay for knowledge? So that's one, those kind of barriers, those things that we're trying to decolonize, and y'all are doing in your work. But then also with decolonizing, like what type of research is valued. And so it is not just the quantitative or just the qualitative. It's centering in the case studies and the narratives, the actual perspectives and the voices on the ground of clients and clinicians. And I did go through some of the things you'll have on the AHC website. And one of the things I noticed is that step by step is pretty similar to what we do with case conceptualizations in the classroom. And so I think that's a really great way to demystify things. And to do it even more, I want to be mindful of time as well, and leave some time in a little bit for some questions that folks may have. As we kind of think about, I grew up in the Black church where people always would say, "Make it plain." And so for me, y'all are making it plain. So can you make it a little bit more plain for scholars that are on the call today or that are watching, or practitioners and also counselors in training? Make it really plain. How can they connect in some way with the Publication Pathways initiative? If you have to give like maybe one or two things for scholars, practitioners, and counselors in training, and I'll let either of y'all start off with that.
Well, I'll go ahead and note the practical aspect. Let's make this very plain. Any practitioner who wants to, well, no, let's be clear. It doesn't have to be a practitioner. You could be in practice and you could be a counselor educator and not quite know how to do case study, and you can still submit through this opportunity. So anybody who's interested, you go to the Association for Humanistic Counseling website. We have a Google form on the website under Publication Pathways Initiative. And on that Google form, you can submit your name and contact information and identify in a synoptic form what you would like to write about. So, and we say, please keep it, confidential, of course, for clients and so forth. So change names. And you submit that Google form. And that Google form comes to me at the Journal, and I will distribute that. I'll review it. And then I distribute it out to our team, Dr. Brizola and others who have volunteered their time and energy to be a part of this process. And upon their review, they will get directly back in contact, right? So perhaps Dr. Brizola decides that, or one of her colleagues decides that, no, this is not quite fit for me, but Dr. Brizola decides that it is a good fit for her. And so she reaches out, or maybe two team up and reach out, and they just have a conversation. They just have a conversation. The pragmatic guide that is there is designed to provide, as you said, plain language. Here are the guideposts. Do you have to stick to that 100%? No, but I think that it demystifies the process. It shows that there can be a fairly clear and direct way to do this. And so what we're really doing the outreach for right now is to say, how do we get in touch with counselors? How do we let counselors know that this is an opportunity? I'd hope anybody here who watches this webinar will just talk with other people about it. Just get people in the know. Just let people know that this is actually out there. Let students know that this is an opportunity. Take a look at it in class and say, maybe this is something that should be done in the future. And maybe every association should take it upon themselves to talk with their journals about making this happen. Right now, this is for the Journal of Humanistic Counseling. So, we're looking for things with the humanistic bent. That's just what we do. But it should be for everybody everywhere. And every journal, and I think every association, should take it upon themselves to evaluate whether they think this is a meaningful thing, and if they can take their own version and bring it to life within their association. And I'm accessible and happy to talk to anybody about what it takes to do that.
Yeah, I like
good.
the image of the bridge too, Dr. Moore. I like how, we're seen as standing on different banks, the researchers and the clinicians. And I just like to think of, let's meet on the bridge, and let's talk, and come over here on my side. Let's see what we can do here and talk about it. And let me go over to your side and see what you're doing. And let's talk about, let's not make that a bridge. Let's make it a plane, a plane, one continent.
Yeah. That's good. We're about to say something, Dr. Wilkinson.
Well, I'll just say that on the instructor pedagogue side for counselor educators, I think we need to have a more intentional conversation about what research and scholarship means in this field. We are an applied field, and I think that the idea of case studies and a lot of conceptual scholarship is made second tier because we have physics envy. in psychology envy. I think that there's, I think that's a thing, that we're trying to, that we want to prove ourselves as an established field. And I'm a big believer in the value of quantitative work. I'm a big believer in it. I do quantitative work and qualitative work. But that doesn't need to be the limit. We need to expand our notion of what it means. And I think we have a deep responsibility to do that because we're an applied field in particular.
And I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Brisola.
I was just thinking that I would add to that just let's remember that what we do today, the theories that we believe in, or the concepts that we use, the techniques or skills or whatever, they come from somewhere, right? They didn't just parachute out of the air. They came from experience. They came from what did you do that worked, or what did you observe, except you write it down and you share it, right? Here, this is what I found. Oh, really? Oh, okay. How about you? Oh, and it moves on until it turns into what we say is the thing or the science.
Dr. Brizola knows so much about this. Her qualitative work is fantastic. Your qualitative work, Dr. Brizola, is wonderful. You give such voice to the people that you bring into your process, and it is poetic, it's lyrical, and that is more alive. And I I appreciate that. I also want to identify that it doesn't have to be case studies, and qualitative work does not have to be dry. It shouldn't be dry. It shouldn't be clinically objective and distant. It should be enriching. It should speak to lived experience. It should give voice to people as they live. I want to feel the feeling of the client as they're breaking through with the counselor. And I think we can all gain from that. And we can see that in really lyrical, qualitative research, really well articulated narrative research. I think we can do the same thing with case study work, where we bring the voices of clients too into our field. We haven't even talked about that. Like, what responsibility do we have to give voice to clients' lived experiences, and to say this is in honor of these are the people that we're trying that we work for, right? And so finding in ways to do that, it can be artistic, it can be creative, it can be lyrical, it can express the beauty of being alive, and the challenges too. It can be a clear depiction of how difficult things can be too. We can give voice to the struggles, and we can do this. This is for everybody. I want to hear from practitioners working LGBTQ plus and BIPOC populations, and everybody has their own cultural voice that they can bring in. And I think that needs to be something that's done too. Articulating how do we articulate our backgrounds and how these inform the way that we understand one another and work together in this field.
Yeah, that's so good. That's just a very embodied presence in research. And even as you're oversharing, I think that's a way we decolonize the research and practitioner bridge and pathways, is to have a more embodied presence and to value that. And so I appreciate y'all sharing that. We want to transition and save some time for folks who may have questions. I have a question if nobody has one immediately, but if you would put that into the chat, questions for Dr. Wilkinson and Dr. Brisola. We also want to just give them props before the presentation is even over, for them coming and sharing with us about the good work that they are doing. And so I am grateful for this presentation. So if you've had any questions, I'm going to pull back up our PowerPoint to have some of our other final announcements on there. But if you've had any questions for them, if you would drop that into the chat. And if Catalina, if you will be looking with me in the Q&A section there. And I want to just kind of start it off. So in addition to publication pathways, y'all have made it very plain, and I appreciate, I'm sure that folks here appreciate how plain you made it for us to access or be a part of this experience. But in addition to publication pathways, how else can researchers and practitioners collaborate to ensure both perspectives are represented in our fields in an accessible way? So what would you all say, either of y'all, how we can do that in addition to publication pathways?
Dr. Brizola, any thoughts?
how you can go about it. Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if this is the practical things that you're looking for, but I think it just having courage, to face and look at what you're doing and value. I mean, everybody has such unique experiences, and I guess to look at that and say, well, what exactly am I going through as a clinician, or what is my client going through as a person, or what are we doing together in therapy, and have the, kind of take a deep breath and like, what's going on here? How can I put this into words? And, sit with a colleague. Oh, just yesterday, I have some guests from Brazil here this week, and Fernanda is engineer, nutritionist of, and she was, she was just talking about what are you doing, and so yeah, having the courage to speak in plain language. What is it that I do? Can I speak it? Can I say it in a language that anyone can understand? Yeah, I can, but it takes a little courage and, making those opportunities to say them.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Anything, that courage to do that. I love that. Anything you would add to that?
Sure. I love this, the courage to do it. I think it starts in the classroom with our master's students. I think that there is a genuine practical divide in the knowledge of professors and master's students. But I don't think there's a genuine knowledge divide. Our purpose there as educators is to train and to bring them into knowledge. But I think too often there is still an expert dissemination model that leads counselors in training to carry with them the feeling of the divide long after they leave their programs. And then the accessibility part becomes another. They are not kept in the fold because there's not necessarily a whole lot through that is always relevant to their practice. I think the shift in counseling today, I think the leadership at ACA has done a great job with updating counseling today. I think that it is increasingly becoming more relevant to everybody under the auspices of ACA. But I think that I think we have a responsibility to start letting students, counselors in training know from the beginning that even if they don't feel like they have the knowledge now, that they can later, and these are the opportunities that can arise for them. That academic case study work and that being in conversation is something they can carry through well into their profession. I think if we can create an ethos in which they believe in their own ability to give back to the field, that they will. I don't think that by and large that is clear enough. And I think that requires a culture change within counselor education about how we view in the long term the way that we relate to master's level counselors. And so if we can kind of pivot in that arena, we can create opportunities generationally. And fortunately, the turnover by generation is like 2 to 3 years. So like, if we all started right now, talking to our master students in a different way about what they can contribute in 5 years, then in 5 years' time, we're going to see the fruit of that.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. And like what you said, mentioning starting in the classroom, and I'm big on alliteration. So there's 3 C's that come to mind kind of what y'all are saying about this change that's happening and that needs to continue to happen in our field. It needs to start in the classroom. We've got to have courage and we've got to collaborate. And so I think all 3 of those align very perfectly with the accessibility and access that we've talked about throughout our time today. And again, I just appreciate y'all for spending your time with us and sharing with our community, bridging this gap in different ways that we can do that practically. I appreciate that. And I have Catalina, if there are any other things that you have as we start to wrap up and turn it over to our professional development team. I know that if you are looking in the chat, there is the spot there to take the survey to get the CEUs as well. see if you had anything else, Catalina, or we'll turn it back over to our professional development team.
I just had a quick question to kind of piggyback off of what we've been talking about. Is there any like advertising materials such as like a flyer or an email announcement? Because I know sometimes like if we give students like a link to go to the website, they might like lose the link. So do y'all have like any like visual advertisement tools that we can like give to students?
We don't right now, but I'll make one.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here with us. And I'll turn it back over to the professional development team to be look out for future events. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Brown.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore, and also to you, Catalina, for all of your hard work on the research team putting this together. A huge hug of gratitude for Dr. Wilkinson, Dr. Brizola, for all of your just information, all of your knowledge, and your wisdom that you've brought to this space today. So thank you so much for your time. I love the 3 C's that Dr. Moore gave in alignment with how we can invoke change within our profession. So with that being said, here is the QR code for your evaluations. You can also find that in the chat. So once you complete the evaluation, you will receive, excuse me, your certificate, your continuing education certificate shortly after, within moments after. If there are no additional questions, I will stop our recording for today. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for your service, and I hope you have an amazing weekend.
Thank you.